Tuesday, 18 May 1943. Dear Kitty, I witnessed a terrific air battle between German and British planes. Unfortunately, a couple of the Allies had to jump from burning machines. Our milkman, who lives in of.a, saw 4 Canadians sitting by the roadside. One of them spoke fluent Dutch. He asked the milkman to give him a light for a cigarette, and told him that the crew had consisted of 6 men. The pilot was burned to death, and their 5th man had hidden himself somewhere. The German police came and fetched the 4 perfectly fit men. I wonder how they managed to have such clear brains after that terrifying parachute trip. Although it is fairly warm, we have to light our fires every other day in order to burn vegetable peelings and refuse. We can't put anything in the garbage pails, because one must always think of the warehouse boy. How easily one could be betrayed by being a little careless. All students who wish either to get their degrees this year or continue their studies are compelled to sign that they are in sympathy with the Germans and approve of the new order. 80% have refused to go against their consciences. Naturally, they had to bear the consequences. All the students who do not sign have to go to a labor camp in Germany. What will be left of the youth of the country if they have all got to do hard labor last night because of all the banging? I was in Pim's bed. Suddenly, Mrs. Von Don jumped out of the bed above us, just as if Mushi had bitten her. A loud clap followed immediately. It sounded just as if an incendiary bomb had fallen beside my bed. I shrieked out, "Light! Light!" Pim turned on the lamp. I expected nothing less than to see the room ablaze within a few minutes. Nothing happened. We all hurried upstairs to see what was going on. Mr. and Mrs. Von Don had seen a red glow through the open window. He thought that there was a fire in the neighborhood, and she thought that our house had caught fire. When the clap came, Mrs. Von Don was already on her feet with her knees knocking. But nothing more happened, and we all crept back into our beds. Before a quarter of an hour had passed, the shooting started up again. Mrs. Von Don sat bolt upright at once, and then went downstairs to Mr. Dussel's room, seeking there the rest which she could not find with her spouse. Dussel received her with the words, "Come into my bed, my child," which sent us off into uncontrollable laughter. The gunfire troubled us no longer. Our fears were banished. Yours, Anna. Sunday, 13 June 1943. Dear Kitty, my birthday poem from Daddy is too good to keep from you. As Pim usually writes verses in German, Margot volunteered to translate it. Judge for yourself whether Margot didn't do it brilliantly. After the usual summary of the events of the year, this is how it ran. Though youngest here, you are no longer small, but life is very hard since one and all aspire to be your teacher. Thus and thus, we have experience, take a tip from us. We know because we did it long ago. Elders are always better, you must know. At least that's been the rule since life began. Our personal faults are much too small to scan. This makes it easier to criticize the faults of others, which seem double size. Please bear with us, your parents, for we try to judge you fairly and with sympathy. Corrections sometimes take against your will, though it's like swallowing a bitter pill, which must be done if we're to keep the peace, while time goes by till all the suffering cease. You read and study nearly all the day, who might have lived in such a different way. You're never bored, and bring us all fresh air. Your only moan is this: what can I wear? I have no knickers, all my clothes are small, my vest might be a loincloth, that is all. To put on shoes would mean to cut off toes. Oh dear, I'm worried by so many woes. There was also a bit about food that Margot could not translate into rhyme, so I shall have to leave it out. Don't you think my birthday poem is good? I have been thoroughly spoiled in other ways, and received a lot of lovely things. Among other things, a fat book on my pet subject, the mythology of Greece and Rome. I can't complain of a shortage of sweets either. Everyone has broken into their last reserves. As the Benjamin of the family in hiding, I am really more honored than I deserve. Tuesday, 15 June 1943. Dear Kitty, lots of things have happened, but I often think that all my uninteresting chatter bores you very much, and that you are glad not to receive too many letters. So I shall give you the news in brief. Mr. Vosen has not been operated on for his duodenal ulcer. When he was on the operating table, and they had opened him up, the doctors saw that he had cancer, which was far too advanced to operate. So they stitched him up again, kept him in bed for 3 weeks, and gave him good food and finally sent him home again. I do pity him terribly, and think it is rotten that we can't go out, otherwise I should certainly visit him frequently to cheer him up. It is a disaster for us that good old Vosen won't be able to keep us in touch with all that goes on, and all he hears in the warehouse. He was our best helper and security adviser. We miss him very much indeed. It will be our turn to hand in our radio next month. Coupuis has a clandestine baby set at home that he will let us have to take the place of our big Phillips. It certainly is a shame to have to hand in our lovely set, but in a house where people are hiding, one daren't, under any circumstances, take wanton risks, and so draw the attention of the authorities. We shall have the little radio upstairs. On top of hidden Jews, clandestine money, and clandestine buying, we can add a clandestine radio. Everyone is trying to get hold of an old set, and to hand that in instead of their source of courage. It is really true that as the news from outside gets worse, so the radio, with its miraculous voice, helps us to keep up our morale and to say again, "Chins up, stick it out, better times will come." Yours, Anna. Sunday, 11 July 1943. Dear Kitty, to return to the upbringing theme for the umpteenth time, I must tell you that I am really trying to be helpful, friendly, and good, and to do everything I can so that the rain of rebukes dies down to a light summer drizzle. It is mighty difficult to be on such model behavior with people you can't bear, especially when you don't mean a word of it. But I do really see that I get on better by shamming a bit, instead of my old habit of telling everyone exactly what I think, although no one ever asked my opinion or attached the slightest importance to it. I often lose my cue and simply can't swallow my rage at some injustice, so that for 4 long weeks we hear nothing but an everlasting chatter about the cheekiest and most shameless girl on earth. Don't you think that I'm sometimes a cause for complaint? It's a good thing I'm not a grouser, because then I might get sour and bad-tempered. I have decided to let my shorthand go a bit, firstly to give me more time for my other subjects, and secondly because of my eyes. I'm so miserable and wretched, as I've become very short-sighted, and ought to have had glasses for a long time already. Phew, what an owl I should look! But you know, of course, in hiding one cannot. Yesterday everyone talked of nothing but Anna's eyes, because Mummy had suggested sending me to the oculist with Mrs. Coupuis. I shook in my shoes somewhat at this announcement, for it is no small thing to do. Go out of doors. Imagine it, in the street. Doesn't bear thinking about. I was petrified at first, then glad. But it doesn't go as easily as that, because all the people who would have to approve such a step could not reach an agreement quickly. All the difficulties and risks had first to be carefully weighed. Although Miep would have gone with me straight away, I got out my gray coat from the cupboard, but it was so small that it looked as if it belonged to my younger sister. I am really curious to know what will come of it all, but I don't think the plan will come off because the British have landed in Sicily now, and Daddy's once again hoping for a quick finish. Ellie gives Margot and me a lot of office work. It makes us both feel quite important, and it is a great help to her. Anyone can file away correspondence and write in the sales book, but we take special pains. Miep is just like a pack mule. She fetches and carries so much. Almost every day she manages to get hold of some vegetables for us and brings everything in shopping bags on her bicycle. We always long for Saturdays when our books come, just like little children receiving a present. Ordinary people simply don't know what books mean to us, shut up here. Reading, learning, and the radio are our amusements. Yours, Anna. Tuesday, 13 July 1943. Dear Kitty, yesterday afternoon, with Daddy's permission, I asked Dussel whether he would please be so good, being really very polite, as to allow me to use the little table in our room twice a week in the afternoons, from 4 o'clock till 5:30. I sit there every day from 2:30 till 4 while Dussel sleeps, but otherwise the room plus table are out of bounds. Inside, in our common room, there is much too much going on. It is impossible to work there. And besides, Daddy likes to sit at the writing table and work too sometimes. So it was quite a reasonable request, and the question was put very politely. Now honestly, what do you think the very learned Dussel replied? No. Just plain no. I was indignant, and refused to be put off like that. So I asked him the reason for his no, but I was sent away with a flea in my ear. This was the barrage which followed. I have to work too, and if I can't work in the afternoons, then there is no time left for me at all. I must finish my task, otherwise I've started it all for nothing. Anyway, you don't work seriously at anything. Your mythology, now just what kind of work is that? Knitting and reading are not work either. I am at the table and shall stay there. My reply was, Mr. Dussel, I do work seriously, and there is nowhere else for me to work in the afternoons. I beg of you to kindly reconsider my request. With these words, the offended Anna turned her back on the very learned doctor, ignoring him completely. I was seething with rage, and thought Dussel frightfully rude, which he certainly was, and myself very friendly. In the evening, when I could get hold of Pym, I told him how it had gone off and discussed what I should do next, because I was not going to give in and preferred to clear it up myself. Pym told me how I ought to tackle the problem, but warned me that it would be better to leave it till the next day, as I was so het up. I let this advice go to the winds, and waited for Dussel after the dishes were done. Pym sat in the room next to us, which had a calming influence on me. I began. Mr. Dussel, I don't suppose you see any point in discussing the matter any more, but I must ask you to do so. Dussel then remarked with his sweetest smile, I am always and at all times prepared to discuss this matter, but it has already been settled, continually interrupted by Dussel. When you first came here, we arranged that this room should be for both of us. If we were to divide it fairly, you would have the morning, and I all the afternoon. But I don't even ask that much, and I think that my 2 afternoons are really perfectly reasonable. At this, Dussel jumped up as if someone had stuck a needle into him. You can't talk about your rights here at all. And where am I to go, then? I shall ask Mr. Von Don whether he will build a small compartment in the attic. Then I can go and sit there. I simply can't work anywhere. With you one always gets trouble. If your sister Margot, who after all has more reason to ask such a thing, would have come to me with the same questions, I should not think of refusing. But you— Then followed the business about the mythology and the knitting, and Anna was insulted again. However, she did not show it and let Dussel finish speaking. But one simply can't talk to you. You are so outrageously selfish. As long as you get what you want, you don't mind pushing everyone else to one side. I've never seen such a child. But after all, I suppose I shall be obliged to give you your own way, because otherwise I shall be told later on that Anna Frank failed her exam because Mr. Dussel would not give up the table for her. It went on, and finally it was such a torrent I could hardly keep pace with it. At one moment I thought, in a minute I'll give him such a smack in the face that he'll fly up to the ceiling together with his lies. But the next moment I said to myself, keep calm. Such a fellow isn't worth getting worked up about. After giving final vent to his fury, Master Dussel left the room with an expression of mixed wrath and triumph, his coat stuffed with food. I dashed to Daddy and told him all that he had not already heard of the story. Pym decided to talk to Dussel the same evening, which he did. They talked for over half an hour. The theme of the conversation was something like this. First of all, they talked about whether Anna should sit at the table, yes or no. Daddy said that he and Dussel had already discussed the subject once before, when he had professed to agree with Dussel in order not to put him in the wrong in front of the young. But Daddy had not thought it fair then. Dussel thought that I should not speak as if he was an intruder who tried to monopolize everything. But Daddy stuck up for me firmly over that, because he had heard for himself that I had not breathed a word of such a thing. To and fro it went, Daddy defending my selfishness and my trifling work, Dussel grumbling continually. Finally, Dussel had to give in after all, and I had the opportunity of working undisturbed until 5 o'clock for 2 afternoons a week. Dussel looked down his nose very much, didn't speak to me for 2 days, and still had to go and sit at the table from 5 till past. Frightfully childish. A person of 54 who is still so pedantic and small-minded must be so by nature, and will never improve. Friday, yours, 16 July 1943. Dear Kitty, burglars again, but real this time. This morning Pater went to the warehouse at 7 o'clock as usual, and at once noticed that both the warehouse door and the door opening onto the street were ajar. He told Pim, who tuned the radio in the private office to Germany, and locked the door. Then they went upstairs together. The standing orders for such times were observed as usual. No taps to be turned on, therefore no washing, silence, everything to be finished by 8 o'clock, and no lavatory. We were all very glad that we had slept so well and had not heard anything. Not until 11:30 did we learn from Mr. Coupuis that the burglars had pushed in the outer door with a crowbar and had forced the warehouse door. However, they did not find much to steal, so they tried their luck upstairs. They stole 2 cash boxes containing 40 florins, postal orders, and checkbooks, and then, worst of all the coupons for 150 kilos of sugar. Mr. Coupuis thinks that they belong to the same gang as the ones who tried all 3 doors 6 weeks ago. They were unsuccessful then. It has caused rather a stir in the building, but the secret annex can't seem to go on without sensations like this. We were very glad that the typewriters and money in our wardrobe, where they are brought upstairs every evening, were safe. Yours, Anna. Monday, 19 July 1943. Dear Kitty, North Amsterdam was very heavily bombed on Sunday. The destruction seems to be terrible. Whole streets lie in ruins, and it will take a long time before all the people are dug out. Up till now there are 200 dead and countless wounded. The hospitals are crammed. You hear of children lost in the smoldering ruins looking for their parents. I shudder when I recall the dull, droning rumble in the distance, which for us marked the approaching destruction. Yours, Anna. Friday, 23 July 1943. Dear Kitty, just for fun, I'm going to tell you each person's first wish when we are allowed to go outside again. Margot and Mr. Van Don long more than anything for a hot bath filled to overflowing, and want to stay in it for half an hour. Mrs. Van Don wants to go and eat cream cakes immediately. Dussel thinks of nothing but seeing Lotja, his wife. Mummy of her cup of coffee. Daddy is going to visit Mr. Volson first. Pater the town and a cinema, while I should find it so blissful I should know where to start. But most of all, I long for a home of our own, to be able to move freely and to have some help with my work again at last. In other words, school. Ellie has offered to get us some fruit. It costs next to nothing. Grapes, 5 florins per kilo. Gooseberries, 0.7 florins per pound. 1 peach, a half a florin. 1 kilo melon, 1.5 florins. Footnote. Equivalent prices, in order, would be approximately $1.40, 21 cents, 14 cents, and 42 cents. Then you see in the newspapers every evening in bold letters, "Play fair and keep prices down."